Everybody else is like, oh, more Shadowhunters, oh yay, more Holly Black fairy books. I can't think of a third example. That's my that. This is my that. This, yes, you know what I mean. Hey y'all, my name is Evelyn. Welcome to my channel, Here There Be Magic, where we talk about the magic of all things storytelling. Today we're talking specifically about young adult fantasy series. So I think most of us can agree that there are very few things in this world that are better than falling into a new fantasy series, escaping your life by getting overly invested in some new magical world. Oftentimes I'll read an entire fantasy series back to back to back. In a week or less, because I'm so invested in the magic system, the characters, the conflict. It's so perfect. But then sometimes you're lucky enough to get in early and read a book when it first releases. And it's amazing watching other people discover it and fall in love with it and getting to talk about it with them as, you know, a community is forming around the story and the characters. However, then you have to wait for the sequels to come out. And that can be both wonderful and just agonizing. I hate waiting for things, especially when a book ends on a cliffhanger. If y'all were like me and you read the Heroes of Olympus books one at a time as they released over a series of years, then you know it can be a lot. It can be intense. But some of the series that I have the deepest connections with are the ones that I had to wait to read over the years because I just invested so much time in them. Honestly, those are probably the books whose plots I remember the best as well, because I was forced to consume them over a longer period of time. So I've already done a series on this channel about fantasy series that I love that are completed, and I will link to that somewhere around here so you can check that out, because I 100% recommend those. But this week I wanted to talk about some YA fantasy series that are just getting started, ones that I've just gotten into, whose sequels are releasing over the next year or so that maybe we can all get invested in them together. I'm splitting this video into two parts. In the first part, we're going to be talking about series that I've already started, that I've read the first book and I'm invested and I want you to be as well. And then at the end, I'm going to rattle off some titles of some series that I'm really looking forward to starting. And I'm going to try and read the first book before the next one releases. So let's get started. First up, we have Bloodlike Magic by Lizelle Sambury. Voya Thomas never expected to fail her calling, the trial that every witch must pass in order to come into their powers. So when her ancestors give her an unprecedented second chance, she agrees, even though this time to fail would mean that every Thomas witch would be stripped of their powers. She's horrified to learn that the task set for her is to kill her first love, especially since she's never actually been in love before. Lucky for her, she's been selected to help beta test a genetic matchmaking service that should be able to help her find the perfect boy fast. So I read this book last year on audiobook. I actually listened to a good chunk of it the day that I got my booster COVID vaccine and was just like laid out and I needed something to do, so I just listened to this book and it's so good. So it's set in this near future version of Toronto where there have been a lot of technological advancements, so it has this sort of sci-fi feel. There's a lot of new technology, there's a lot of stuff connected to genetics. But at the same time, the main character is part of this secret witch society. The book actually balances the fantastical and the science fictional elements of the world building so well, especially when it comes to like the stakes that exist in the world. The love interest who you want to root for because he's a pretty cool guy, but you also don't want to root for because you don't want him to get murdered because he is a pretty cool guy, is also trans, which is really great. I can probably count on one hand the number of young adult fantasy books specifically that I know with trans main characters in them. I really love the way that family was portrayed in this book. Voya lives in a multi-generational home, and she has connections to her culture both through magic but also to the actual Caribbean culture that her family comes from as well through food. Her family and her heritage play a huge motivating role in her life. She's literally willing to consider murder for these people. That's how much she cares about them, and it's such a compelling conflict. The book ended so stellarly and I cannot wait to see what happens next in the sequel, Bloodlike Fate, which is set to release on August 9th. Next we have These Feathered Flames by Alexandra Overy. The twin heirs of Turin have been separated since they were children, both preparing for their respective futures. While Isveta, the future queen, has been learning the ins and outs of court, Asya has been training under her aunt, the mysterious Firebird, to keep magic balanced within the realm. But before either of them are ready to assume their roles, the queen is killed and a new ruler must be crowned. This book is everything. So the story and the world building are based off of the Slavic folktale of the Firebird. It's a story I was familiar with because of the ballet, because I was a ballet kid. I fell in love with Asya like right away. She is too pure, too good for this world, and must be protected at all costs. And her love interest, it's a sapphic princess guard sort of thing, classic Sunshine Grump scenario, except the Sunshine one also has terrifying magical powers. So magic in this world is becoming increasingly unbalanced despite the best efforts of the Firebird. Everything political is in upheaval after the death of the queen. Both of these girls have a lot going on, and they could probably help one another, except they don't remember how to be sisters anymore. They've been separated for too long. I'm just over here waiting for the day when they click and become unstoppable. That's what I'm hoping for, at least in book 2, This Cursed Crown, which is set to release on December 6th. Next, we have The Bone Spindle by Leslie Vedder. After being betrayed by her ex, bookish treasure hunter Fi doesn't believe in fairy tales like cursed princes and true love anymore. But when she and her partner Shane uncover a ruin connected to an ancient magical order, she accidentally pricks her finger on a bone spindle and ends up stuck with Briar Rose, the spirit of a prince who's been waiting 100 years for the kiss that will wake him from his legendary curse. This is a Sleeping Beauty reimagining set in a post-fairy tale world. So Fi and her treasure hunting partner Shane are living 100 years post Briar Rose's sleeping curse. He's put under this spell to protect him from the Spindle Witch, who's trying to use her dark magic to corrupt him. This far in the future, he's become more legend than anything. Although they do know witches are real, they're also being heavily persecuted. So not only are they being targeted by the Spindle Witch, who is still kicking and still wants to snatch up Briar Rose, they're also being hunted by witch hunters who really don't like them because of their association with magic. It's such an interesting world that they get to explore. It's got a lot of action, a lot of exciting discoveries being made. I literally finished this book last night. I cannot stop thinking about it. It's the reason I made this video. That's how much I cannot wait to read the sequel, The Severed Thread, which is set to release on February 2nd, 2023. Next, we have Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. Vanya, the goddaughter of the low gods Luck and Death, has always had to fend for herself. So when her godmothers ask her to pick one of them to serve, she swears that she's going to buy her freedom instead. She starts by stealing the life of Giselle, the princessin she's worked for years, and then posing as Giselle via a string of magical pearls proceeds to steal a bunch of riches from a bunch of unbearable rich people. She is this close to getting the money that will buy her freedom when things begin to fall apart. First of all, Giselle's fiance is back and he wants to get married. Then an overachieving junior detective shows up to investigate the string of robberies that's been sweeping through the nobility. And to top it all off, she angers another low god and ends up cursed to turn into jewels every time she's greedy. Now, she only has a few weeks to solve all of those problems, and she probably can't do it by herself. This book was my favorite book of 2021. I am so obsessed with it, and I went in thinking that it was a standalone fantasy and was pleasantly surprised to find out that there is a sequel, Painted Devils, which is set to release sometime in 2023. I'm so happy because I adore Vanya. Vanya is one of my favorite young adult characters, favorite protagonists ever. She is so morally gray in such a frustrating way, but such an understandable way. She's such a compelling character, and I adore her relationship with her love interest. They are such idiots. But honestly, my favorite part, the thing that really hooked me from the beginning, is the way that it is framed, truly leaning into the story's roots as a fairy tale retelling, as inspired by folklore. This is a retelling of the Goose Girl fairy tale from the perspective of the Wicked Maid in that story, so it flips it on its head, but it still respects where it came from, right? And there are sections that just read exactly like a fairy tale, and it's, oh, I love it so much as someone who adores fairy tales, and it's such a perfect book, and I'm so excited that I get to spend more time in this world. Okay, last up for ones that I'm recommending, and I cannot believe I'm saying this in the year 2022, Daughter of the Pirate King by Tricia Levenseller. Yes, I know that this duology finished years ago, right? But she just announced that she has a companion novel, so a third book set in the world, coming out in 2023. So the original series follows Alosa, the daughter of the Pirate King, who purposefully gets captured by an enemy crew so that she can search their ship for 1/3 of a map that will lead them to the Isla de la Canta, the home of the legendary sirens. So technically, Tricia Levenseller has said that you can read this upcoming book as a standalone, but it is set in the same world, and it follows two characters from the original two books, Sorinda and Kieran, on their own adventures. So if you've read the first two, you'll have the backstory, you'll probably appreciate it more. So I am counting this as a continuation for the series, and you have just enough time to get in the first two this year before the third one releases. I cannot wait. This is one of the series that really made me fall in love with YA. I have so many good memories tied up with these books, and I love Tricia Levenseller, just everything else I've read by her, although I haven't caught up in her catalog yet, which we'll get to in a second. So I am so excited to get more of this world. What? Okay, so to round out this video, I want to talk about a handful of series that are on my TBR that I'm really going to prioritize starting before the second book's release. Starting with Tricia Levenseller's Bladesmith series. The first book is called Blade of Secrets. From my understanding, it follows a girl who is a talented bladesmith. She can craft magical weapons, and when one of them falls into the wrong hand, she has to go on a quest to get it back, I believe. And she also has very bad anxiety, and so this book has been at the top of my TBR for a while because I, as established, love Tricia Levenseller and also have anxiety, and I just haven't, the timing hasn't worked out for me to check it out from the library yet. That is the reason I haven't started any of these, is the timing hasn't worked for me to check them out from the library yet. So fingers crossed. The second book, Master of Iron, is set to release on July 26th. Next, we have another book with a sword on the cover, Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard. She wrote the Red Queen series, which I did not get through, but this book seems a lot more up my alley. So if I remember correctly, I did not put the descriptions for these here, which was like a mistake. It's set in like a post-saved fantasy world that's sort of falling apart, and the main character has to fix that somehow. This is a terrible... Man, I should have looked up the descriptions for the last half of this video. But I know that I read it and I went, oh, if she's gonna get me, she's gonna get me with this. And so I'm really excited to pick that one up, and hopefully, if I like it, the sequel, Bladebreaker, which is set to release on June 28th. Next we have 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lem. This is a retelling of the Seven Swans story. I love fairy tales. That's also been established, so I've been meaning to pick this one up. The sequel, The Dragon's Promise, releases on August 30th. Legendborn by Tracy Deonn is a contemporary fantasy reimagining of Arthurian legend, and I believe the main character is entering this like pre-college program. She's also mourning the death of her mother, and she discovers that this magical world exists, and there's this secret society at her school that's like has something to do with Arthurian legend. I just don't know what exactly, obviously, because I haven't read the book. The sequel, Bloodmarked, is set to release on November 22nd. Then we have Iron Widow by Jianjie Zhao. This is inspired by China's only female emperor. It's set in this speculative world where you can power mechas, and oh gosh, all I remember is that the main character is righteously angry and that there's a throuple in it. If that sounds good to you, then we should read it. And then finally, The Ivory Key duology by Akshay Raman. The first book released back in January, book 2 is set to release in 2023. It's called The Crimson Fortress, and this one is about some royal siblings who sort of have to band together after not seeing each other for a while in order to save their kingdom, except they may not all be trustworthy. Okay, note to self, your memory is not as good as you think it is. I'll leave links in the description for where you can order all of these books and find much better descriptions than the ones that I just gave of the ones I haven't read yet. Alright, that is all that I have for y'all today. I hope that you've found at least one YA fantasy series you are excited to pick up in the near future. Comment down below, let me know what you're planning to read. If you've already read some of these, I'd love to talk to you about them. Also, are there any YA fantasy book series currently releasing that you think I should be aware of? Because I don't know all the books. I am not... I almost said sentient. No. I'm not omniscient. I am mostly sentient. If you liked this video and you want to see more from my channel, remember to click that subscribe button. With that being said, my name is Evelyn. I make new videos every Magical Monday, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye!